What were their like operations and stuff that they were really trying to do or have you be a part of?
I'll just put it this way. I was completely radicalized. I was radicalized in the way that I was always committing crimes, and I was always doing dirty things. Like, that's what our movement survived off of a lot, and it's what I survived off of. I mean, a lot of people were dealing in guns and all that stuff, and I'm traveling around the country. I've lived around the compounds and different movements, and I lived in Virginia Beach, I lived in New Jersey, I lived in New York, I lived in Merrill, Baltimore, I lived in, this is all my 15, 16-year-olds, you know, I'm traveling around. I moved out to Indiana, then I moved to Springfield, Illinois, but I'll tell you, man, I was living in like some safe houses, some places, and I sat around with guys who were militant, you know, like they weren't so much like the street guys like a lot of us were. These were guys who sat around and talked about the race war and talked about blowing up federal buildings. And I'm going to tell you, if those guys back then would have came to me and said, this is how radical I mean, I even had my own TV show to recruit people and cable access. I mean, I was out there, man. But I'll tell you that if someone came to me with a truck, a U-Haul keys and said, yo, there's something in the back of that truck, we need you to go drop it off at a federal building, like Timothy McVeigh did, I would have said absolutely.
Welcome back to the Invest in Yourself podcast. Today I'm joined by Frank Meeink, who was a former member of the white supremacist skinhead gang. Frank put in a lot of work to further their gang's operations at any cost. He even had his own TV show where he would teach people racism. He would also go on to land himself in prison for a number of years after he was arrested for beating a man very badly. He exposes how this gang recruited people, how they would serve their gang by hurting other people, and their illegal operations. You'll hear all about it today. Frank has completely turned his life around. Please subscribe to my channel for more interviews like this. And without further ado, let's get into Frank's story. Good morning, Frank. Thank you for coming on my podcast today, man.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, you got a really great redemption story, so I thought it was only right to reach out to you and see if we could connect and, have you come on my podcast, man. So I really do appreciate you taking out some time this morning.
All right, well, let's hopefully keep our expectations low, and we'll be all right. We'll have fun with
this. All right, man. Well, I think the best way to get into your story is by let's hear about your early life. What was it like growing up for you?
Well, I grew up in South Philly, South Philadelphia, and well, when I was first born and raised, my mom and dad, I guess, were still together. I never have seen my mom and dad together. My mom left him when I was very young and went from one neighborhood to another neighborhood. And we went back to my mom's old neighborhood where my grandmom and grandpapa and some of my cousins and all them lived in that area. And so grew up with a single mom, and then we moved out we lived with my grandparents, and we moved out. My mom got her own little place, and and I knew she struggled sometimes. I was, even as a little kid, I noticed that, like, we were not, we didn't have abundance of things, but I was kind of okay with that. And, I remember kind of being on food stamps sometimes and being really not embarrassed, but I knew that wasn't, that people looked down on it or something, because I remember my mom would send me sometimes with food stamps, and, that was always a thing. And in South Philly, you're growing up and you're in a little corner deli and you got to spend food stamps. You can sit around and, you pull out the food stamps because you have to rip them out of the booklet. You couldn't just have loose food stamps because they knew that they were sold and bought illegally around our neighborhood. So you had to, like, actually have the booklet, and you had to rip them out and hand them to the cashier. And, every time, man, I was doing that, who came in the store? The hottest girl in my neighborhood. Right? And, it's kind of embarrassing, that type of stuff. So, but my mom, it was all Irish Catholic neighborhood, and I was raised Catholic, and a lot of stuff revolved around the church. My grandmom and grandpa were very involved with the church. So, but it was like kind of a little Irish hood. You learned how to fight. That was one of the big things in our neighborhood. People just, you got in a lot of fights as a kid. I don't know. I know other people don't live that way, and that was different for some, but I would think every kid in my neighborhood, you at least got into a handful of fights. People like me get into a little bit more, a handful of fights. Right. And I grew up with a lot of big older cousins around me who, they were kind of mean to me a lot. I was the little cousin that kind of tried to hang out with the older cousins who were, 5, 6, 7 years older. And, you're the little annoying, cousin, but I also learned how to take a couple punches here and there. And my mom got married to a man who, you know, he liked to punch, he liked to hit, and
Um,
about
I
go
was going
ahead.
to say, I did read your book, and from that, I really do remember you going into depth about the abuse with your mom's new boyfriend and how it lasted for so long. What was that like for you, and how did that make you feel seeing your mom allow this happen?
Yeah, no, man, it's a what the worst part of it is, and this is my perception of it is that I was telling people, I told my grandmom, I told a couple aunts, told a couple cousins, like I'm like, yo, I don't want to go home with this guy anymore. Like he's at home, he's just a bully to me. Like he would literally just look to bully me, and they would just say, no, Frank, you got to go home. You got to go home. And it was, they did the best they could. I'm not knocking any of my aunts or uncles or cousins, or my grandmom before this, but I'm just letting people know, man, when you're a kid, you're just like, oh, like I used to plant, and this is, I want people to understand this. I didn't want to die as a kid, but I used to plan on getting hit by a car. Like that was my goal a lot because in South Philly, everyone gets hit by cars. You live in these little small narrow streets. It's always like a cousin that runs you over, so you're not suing anybody here. You just kind of get run over, and then hopefully you're okay. And a lot of times we go to hospitals, and I remember, man, like I was the one kid in the neighborhood that wanted to get hit by a car, and every time I go out to get hit by
Pretty.
that,
I mean,
every time I
you
go to get hit by a car, this body, my brain with the natural preservation thing will be like, get out of the way. And every time I juke out of the way of the car, and I just be like, damn, man, like I'm such a loser. I can't even get hit by a car.
yeah. So you were really feeling those feelings at a young age. How old were you?
That I was 11, 12, 13. Yeah,
So that abuse really did take a big toll on you, I would imagine.
yeah. And especially when you don't think that people are listening and you can't go get help. Like even my school, I would say things to my school. They call my mom, and my mom would come in and berate me and be like, "It's not that bad." And I don't mean to knock my mom. She was doing the best she could too. Like, you know what I mean? My mom's now pregnant by the guy, so it's like a whole new dynamic in the house, and she just was trying to make things work, and for a long time I had a huge resentment against her until I learned how to let it go. To know that she was, even her drug use my mom eventually died of a fentanyl overdose in 2016.
Sorry
Um,
to hear that.
yeah, and it's
That's tough.
yeah, but again, I have to always to not have feelings like that. I always got to know she did the best she could with what she had and what she was raised with or what she knew in life. And so anyway, I
So
totally forgive her.
So during that time when she was with him in the beginning stages and you were young, so she was going through a drug problem as well back then.
Well, no, the drug problem. I mean, she was always a drinker. You know what I mean? And it was kind of just the thing in our neighborhood anyway. Everyone just kind of drank. It's an Irish Catholic neighborhood, and I'm not stereotyping. I lived there, and I could tell you that's everyone drank in our neighborhood. It's just um, we had beer delivery services when I grew up. And this is way before Google Eats and all that other stuff. This was you couldn't get beer in Philadelphia. You're only allowed to buy 6 packs of beer at bars, and they didn't sell beer at grocery stores. You can only buy beer from beer distributors. Well, they used to deliver in our neighborhood, and this is again in the '80s. And I even as a kid, man, when I was 13, I was drinking because I could call the beer distributor for my mom. She'd be like, my mom and my stepdad would be like, hey, call Bill's, or one was called Bill's, and the other one was called Bell's, and you call either one of them. And even though I was 13 years old, they would get my mom's beer, which was 16-ounce Bush returnable bottles, and then sometimes, man, if I felt like it, I'd be like, hey, you know what? I'm 13 now. I'd be like, you know what? Throw on some Mickey Big Mouse. And they'd be like, all right, Frank. And they'd drop it off at our house, and we had credit with the place, where my parents would leave money for the beer, and I, had some extra. And so drinking was, just what everyone did. So anyway, my mom definitely was always a drinker and always partied a lot, but the drug stuff that I didn't see came on a lot later on, where I seen her real bad in Xanax and Valium and OxyContin got really big. So that was years later. But when I was younger, it was definitely drinking, and I used to find little straws and mirrors around our place, the stuff like that. So
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, so I mean, it was really present and active in your home and very accessible
Yeah,
alcohol or whatever it may have been. And
it
so
was
would
normal. It was
did you
normal.
you just started to form a habit at a young age with that kind of stuff?
hmm And I didn't do drugs, well, we'll get into that, but, I didn't do drugs for years. I was just a drunk, even as a kid, even as a 14, when as we're about to get into where I went, I was a full blown drunk my whole teenage years. So yeah, and my dad was in a different neighborhood, and I wound up getting moved up with my dad when I was about 13. I got kicked out of my mom's. My dad had a little bar, a little tavern. It wasn't his. He kind of managed it and was a middleman drug dealer in that bar, and that was the deal. And like I didn't have. I went and lived up with him in a really, really rough neighborhood, Southwest, West Philly, and it was rough, man. I went to an all-black school when I was 13, going to 14, and you know, you definitely learned how to fight there. And it was a rough school, really rough school. And so that's where I went. And yeah, so that's my upbringing with my parents.
Was it pretty when you went with your father? I know this is when the problems on the street did start with a lot of fights with different colored kids and all that. What was one of the most like fights where you got beat up the most in this neighborhood?
Um, I got jumped a couple times. If I, as one of the white kids at our school, and I can kind of handle myself. I'm not saying I'm a big tough guy, but I knew how to fight. I have a pretty nasty right hook. Um, if I was winning a one-on-one fight with a black kid at my school, they weren't going to have that. I was going to get jumped. You know what I mean? So you had a few seconds to get a couple good shots in, and now you better curl up. You better, everyone could be Mr. Superman and think you're going to pull out some kung fu stuff. No, when you're fighting with one guy and then people start sucker punching you, because you're winning the fight. So that was kind of what went on in my school.
And so was this when you started to get exposed to like different street gangs in that area?
Yeah, and also, I'll just tell you this: where I grew up in my mom's neighborhood, my school I went to was very diverse. It was a public school in Philly, so it had black kids, it had Latino kids, we had Asian kids, but the school was right in our Irish neighborhood, so it had a lot of Irish kids. It also had some Italian kids, but and we kind of either bonded, we fought, but it wasn't like this, you know what I mean? So now it was where I noticed that, like, wow, my race is different here. You know what I mean? Like, my race makes me a target here. And so yeah, yeah, there was gangs like the Junior Black Mafia was big at the time, and they would always patrol, like, because they were the freshmen at the other high school, and this is a junior high. So those kids were always around our school looking for trouble. And it was yeah, that's when I really did start to notice, like, whoa, like, and then, as a kid also, I was like, you hear this a lot, like, you're getting jumped by black kids, and you go tell, and same thing like with the abuse, you know what I mean? I go tell people, I'm like, yo, I'm being jumped by these dudes. And everyone's like, oh, and in my heart, and what I felt at the time was, I was like, wow, if we were all white dudes jumping a black kid, we all be in trouble, and it'd be this crazy thing. And I'm like, but why is it not now? And that's, yeah. So I started having these feelings towards different races at the time, definitely.
And so that's what we can move into now is you being introduced to the skinheads, right? You had some cousins or family members that were involved with that.
Yeah, I had a cousin up in the the easiest way to tell people is the Lancaster area. They didn't live in Lancaster County; they lived in a different county, but it was part of the Lancaster area. And if anyone knows Lancaster, it's Amish. It's very Amish. But my
Mhm.
cousins and family up there aren't Amish. They're from South Philly. They just happen to move up in that area. There's, on the 4 mile long, they had a big long mile road, and two of the people were Mennonites, which are kind of Amish, and then the other two were like regular people. And I don't mean to knock Amish people and say they're not regular, but to me as a kid, there was Amish people with horse and buggies, and then there was up on this my cousins where they lived, and then there was like normal people, which was like the normal whites. And so yeah, I loved going up there. It was super cool. We used to go in ponds and creeks and catch crayfish and do all that cool stuff. You know what I mean? And there was cows and pigs, and there was Amish people. Like, those people really turn butter. They don't do it the reenacted. It isn't like down in Philly where you go to Ben Franklin's house and they react stuff for you, reenact. these people really turn butter, and so that stuff was fascinating to me. And so my cousin, I get up there, and he was a little punk rock skater kid, and I was kind of always into punk rock skater stuff too a little bit, and we were both into sports too. On top of that, so I loved going up there and hanging out with him and doing whatever he was doing. He was the older cousin. I thought he was super cool, and so that summer I go up there, and he wasn't a punk rock skater no more. He was into this neo-Nazi thing, and him and all of his neo-Nazi friends would come over to the house all the time and hang out, and they bring beer over, and they were 15, 16, 17 year olds, and they had tattoos already, and they talked about race like I'd never heard people talk about race, like multiracial society doesn't work. Whatever. I know blacks and whites don't get along. How about that? You know what I mean? That's how I was as a kid. And my cousin would happen, and whatever reason, man, people would wind up talking to me about what it's like growing up in the city where I grew up, because I grew up in a really, my dad's neighborhood was really rough, and so I would get to talk to these big bad neo Nazis about, because they all lived around Amish people and other white people, so they could throw out the N word like it was nothing. They get to do this stuff, and I was always like, where I grew up, it's this way, and they used to like to talk to me about it, and for whatever it may be, man, I'm a 13 going on 14-year-old kid. And if I came home to my mom or dad's house and I had a black eye or a trophy or whatever, my parents didn't say, "Wow, how'd you get that?" They ain't got time for that. They didn't have time for me. I was a mistake between my two parents. My two parents who were both, drug addict alcoholics, and didn't have time for me. So when someone starts asking me those questions, I enjoyed that. It's someone asking me, "How's your day, dude? How's your life?" Even though they're really just asking me what's it like being around black people. But to me, it was someone going, how's your day? How's your life, Frank? And I enjoyed that, being around them. So yeah, started hanging out with these neo-Nazi guys. One of the main thing is, as a young 13, 14-year-old man who we would go to these nightclubs and everyone was scared of them. Everyone had fear for them. And all these other neo-Nazis would show up that I don't know, and they were from other little towns, and they would all know they were all going to be at these certain nightclubs together, and I would just be around with them, and I noticed people were scared of them, and when people would come by us, they would walk away because they were scared, and they had fear in their eyes, and man, I love that. I gotta, I'm going to be real honest, and up until that point, I might be a 14-year-old athletic kid who can kind of scrap. I mean, I was a little scrappy little guy, but deep down inside, man, I was about, whatever time my stepdad moved in, probably when I was 9 or 8 or whatever it was, I stopped developing. I really did. And so, I feared everything. I was like a fearful 7 or 8-year-old boy in that body. And I feared my parents. I feared my step parents. I feared my school. I feared some days if I was going to have enough food to eat. So when people fear me, bad, man, whatever it took and whatever that made me feel, that's what happened. I enjoyed being around those guys. And now, as these guys start, I had a little teardrop haircut. I had a little skater, a little mullet, kind of teardrop haircut. I thought I was cool. I was cool. I had it going on, but whatever. When these guys asked me to shave my head one day, I was like, all right, because I was like the only non-shaved head guy that was always around with this crew that summer. So eventually they're like, when are you going to shave this off your head? And I already got the black-white thing. I'm like, all right, these guys, I already get that. So I shaved my head and become part of this. And, to make this fast is that, growing up especially in my mom's neighborhood, there's like ethnic racism towards everybody. Everyone, there's the little Irish neighborhood and we hate everyone outside. Everyone talks bad about the other neighborhoods, the Italians, the blacks, the Cambodians, whatever it might be, the Puerto Ricans. We all talk bad about each, and they talk bad about us. I mean, we all do it together. It's like just kind of the way it was. And so, but there was things that I would hear people say like, oh, I went to the store today and Johnny Jewed me. Right? I never got the joke. And everyone laughed. What are you, picking up a penny? What are you, a Jew? I used to hear that, and I never, so I remember asking my uncle one time, I was like, why is that so funny? Like, why, when you said Johnny tried to Jew you today at the grocery store because he didn't give you the right change back, why is that funny? And he starts to try to explain it to me. He's like, well, see, Frank, it's like this, and the Jews are kind of notorious for money. And he stopped himself and goes, you know what? You'll get the joke when you're older. You'll get that joke when you're older. All right. Didn't get the joke until I was 14 and I was at my first like little neo-Nazi rally. And I hear this guy start talking about how the Jews secretly take money from the Federal Reserve when we don't know it, and da 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 da. And as he's talking about this stuff, for one, I'm 14. You're talking about the Federal Reserve. Come on, I'm 48. I still don't know what the Federal Reserve is. You know what I mean? I do, but I don't. You know what I mean? Especially back then, I had no idea what this was. But when he starts talking about the money, it unlocked the joke. Oh, now I get why my. Wow. Okay. And I was like, you know what? I must be older. My uncle said I'll get the joke when I'm older. So I get the joke. So I must be older. Now, look, I'm by this time very angry at all the adults in my life. I mean, I felt like they left me to fend for myself. I mean, it's just the way I felt. Some aunts and uncles say, we tried to help you as a kid. Maybe they did. To me, my perception was that no one was trying to help me. And so I want to know what the adults know. These people left me to fend for myself. So now I must be learning the older, this must be how I'm becoming a man because I'm learning what they know. And I fully bought into this stuff, fully bought in that this was my job, was to protect the white race and become this white warrior. And we put it this way, I literally believed that because of the color of my skin, I was better than another human being on this planet. I mean, that's basically what you're taught.
So yeah, so I mean, they really groomed you into this whole life. They saw probably what you were lacking, like you were lacking support at home. You needed to feel welcome, that you needed to have a family or something. So I mean, you were an easy target for any kind of group or any kind of gang. Maybe if it wasn't this one, it could have been a different
Oh,
gang.
yeah. Could have been anything.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that would have gave me purpose, meaning, and feeling of superiority. You know what I mean? I felt like the lowest of the low. And someone's like, no, you're better than everybody else. What are you talking about? You know? And of course, man, my ego was broken. My ego's still broken to this day. I have to do a lot of work on my ego and my self-esteem sometimes. It's still to this day. I mean, it's a daily process for people like me. Again, throughout my whole neo-Nazi years, I'm a full-blown alcoholic because we weren't allowed to do drugs. And I didn't want to do drugs. My parents did drugs, and I hated my parents. So I was like, I want to not do what they're doing. And I was in the neo-Nazi movement from, beginning of my 14th year until the end of my 19th year. I was in this. So.
Oh, so you were a part of it for 5 years, right? Total?
6 years, really.
6 years?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you talked about the beginning of it, and then what about like in the middle? Like where were you at, and what were their like operations and stuff that they were really trying to do or have you be a part of?
Well, I'll just put it this way. I was radicalized. When people talk about people that are radicalized, that was who I was. I was completely radicalized. I was radicalized in the way that I was always committing crimes, and I was always doing dirty things. Like that's what our movement survived off of a lot, and it's what I survived off of. I mean, not to say the movement, but a lot of people were dealing in guns and all that stuff, and I'm traveling around the country. I was like, I didn't go to high school. I never went to high school. I went to high school for like a month or something like that at one time, but that didn't work. By that time, I was a full-fledged neo-Nazi, but I didn't really go to high school. I just lived around the compounds and different movements, and I lived in Virginia Beach. I lived in New Jersey. I lived in New York. I lived in, Baltimore. I lived in, this is all my 15, 16-year-olds. I'm traveling around. I moved out to Indiana. Then I moved to Springfield, Illinois. But I'll tell you, man, I was living in like some safe houses, some places. And I sat around with guys who were militant, like they weren't so much of like the street guys like a lot of us were. These were guys who sat around and talked about the race war and talked about blowing up federal buildings. And I'm going to tell you, if those guys back then would have came to me and said, this is how radical I mean, I even had my own TV show to recruit people and cable access. I mean, I was out there, man. But I'll tell you that if someone came to me with a truck, with a U-Haul keys and said, yo, there's something in the back of that truck, we need you to go drop it off at a federal building, like Timothy McVeigh did, I would have said absolutely. I would have said absolutely, I'll do that. That's where I was as a human being. And again, it's all my ego. I want to force the world to believe what I believe. I want to, be a warrior for the white race, and go hurt other children of God, because we're big believers in God. Well, my group were always big believers in God. They talked about how God's vengeance and God, wants us to, kill the mud races and kill the Jews, and because,
What was that? Because you bring up the whole thing with God. Like, what is the like, if they believe in like God and all that, like, what is the purpose of that? I don't know. I like explain it a little more.
Yeah, no, that it's believed that and you'll hear this. You hear, if you just even do a little bit of research on some of these groups, especially the religious, far right religious groups, where they talk about that the Jews are the seed of Satan. Like, they talk about Jews are from the devil, and that's because they talk about the story of Adam and Eve, is that the serpent comes and impregnates her with Cain. That was really the sin that she committed. You have to see, to them, you have to read between the lines for everything, because there's secret meanings in everything, and so be it. Everyone believes that in some way. It's your own interpretation, right? And whatever you come with it with love. Then you read the book in love. If you read the book with anger and hatred and ego and fear, then you start to read things to make you say, worse, better. And so they would believe that, like, Cain was the original, since he was impregnated by the serpent man to Eve, that Cain is the first evil Jew on the planet. That's where they always say that Jews are the seed of Satan. It goes back to that story. And so they break down all these stories about how, everyone else, all races other than white people, because they believe that we are the lost tribes of Israel, the 10 lost tribes, not the 12, and that everyone else is just beasts of the fields, what they call the mud people. They're just beasts of the fields. They have no soul and they don't care. And then the Jews are from the devil. So you have to fight the devil all the time. So that's the whole concept of it out of the Bible.
So they would use the Bible a lot
Oh, yeah.
to relay their messages and all kinds of different stuff to.
Just so you know, I mean, it's like, even earlier when you were saying, like, these guys knew that I was this troubled kid. Like, these people really believe that. So they don't think like, oh, we're going to manipulate anyone. They think we need to teach, just like, because I mean, look, I became a preacher and a teacher. So it wasn't, and I never thought, oh, like, I could know that when people didn't have good home lives, that they would be easier recruits. Absolutely, I knew that. But I just wanted to preach my beliefs. You know what I mean? And the same thing with them. They just wanted to preach what they believed. And so here, I'll break it down for people in a really common way. Is, you know what a bait and switch is, right? The bait and switch. I promise you something, you give me something in return, and then I give you something that I didn't promise you, right? So it's called the bait and switch. It's, I promise you to give you this, and then I give you something else instead. Racism is the greatest bait and switch ever pulled on people. And I'll explain. People will come to us right now. I'm hardcore into this. I'm 16, 17 years old. I got a big swastika on my neck. I'm recruiting off of TV. I would go around and just recruit other kids from high schools and stuff like that, even though I didn't go to high school. I'm high school age, and so I got along with high schoolers and would hang outside of high schools and befriend certain guys and people. And so what you'd always get, and you hear this still to this day, people go, man, I just want to be proud to be white. Why can they say black pride? And when they say black pride, everyone's like, oh, that's cool. But when I say white pride, everyone's like, you're a racist. That's a very, very common argument in this world. And I would say, yeah, man, that's what we're about, man. We're about being proud to be white. You know what, man? Why don't you come join our group? Why don't you come to our little get-together? We'll talk about it. Because we believe exactly what you believe, man. We just want to be proud of our heritage. And then when we get you to our group, now, again, I'm not figuring this out. This is just the way it is. When you come to our group, we don't ever talk about being proud of being white. We only talk about what they're doing. What are those people doing? What they're ruining everything. Their heritage is horrible. They're doing this. We only talk about other people. We don't ever say, oh my God, the white race did this or white people have done this. It's always like really bad stuff when we talk about that. So, like we should still own slaves. Like, it isn't a group of people talking around, you know what, man, so and so really helped humanity. We should be proud of that. No, it's always like, let's be proud of Hitler. Let's be proud of, Rudolf Hess. Let's be proud of other major white racists who have done horrible things. That's what we talk about. So what we did is we took this guy's false pride and his broken ego and his broken self-esteem, because if I have to go around and be proud of something that I had nothing to do with, I want to remind everyone that I had nothing to do with this skin color. My parents just happened to be the same color, and that's what I'm going to hang my hat on, that's the proudest thing in my life. Come on. I didn't do anything. I didn't go help humanity. I didn't help mankind. In fact, I'm taking away from it by saying, because of the color of my skin, God loves me better, and you're all wrong, So, but at the time, that felt right, because again, anyone that's in these far right, anyone that's in the far extremes of anything, there's definitely ego issues, low self-esteem issues, right? And it's just, this is how I identified it, and it's just how I coped with my broken ego, because I felt unwanted. I felt horrible about myself. I was told my whole life I was going to be nothing but a ditch digger. That's what my stepdad used to tell me all the time. You ain't going to be nothing but a ditch digger. You better learn how to read a tape measure now. And then he would say, come here, dumbass. Sorry if I can't curse on this, but that's what
sorry. No problem.
And he'd pull out a tape measure and go, tell me where 16th and 5/16 is on a tape measure. And as a kid, I could tell you where a half inch was or a quarter inch. I don't know 5/16. And so when I would be like, and I would guess, and he'd be like, no, you're wrong because you're an idiot. And instead of going, hey, this is what 5/16 is, or this is what, no, he wouldn't do that. He'd rather tell me I was an idiot, and because I didn't know something that no one had ever taught me. Right? So what do you think my ego is? Where do you think my low self-esteem is coming? You know what I mean? Like, I was never told, yo, Frank, you're going to do good in this world. You do good things, and how's life? Again, weren't words I've heard growing up. I heard that I was an idiot, and I heard I was not going to do nothing but dig ditches for the rest of my life.
Terrible expectations to leave out for you.
Yeah.
Just growing up, just having terrible expectations that they had. It's just didn't really have much for you to really live up to or anything. It was just that you're gonna do nothing productive, nothing good. So seems like you set out to do that when you found the group of guys you hooked up with, and just kept trying to build up and do something for their organization. And is that what kind of, would you say, motivated you, because you wanted to have some kind of impact, some kind of meaningful? I mean, that was what you were.
Absolutely. I mean,
that was your way of thinking.
I went to prison for kidnapping one of our rivals, like Antifa. You hear about the anti-fascist movement, Antifa, and all that. I mean, that is the biggest thorn in the side of the white supremacist movement, is that group. For everyone that hates Antifa and they blame them forever, they are the biggest thorn in the side of the neo-Nazi movement in this country, because they're always on our butts and they're always exposing things, and always, so we constantly fight it with them all around the country. It's back then the war was even crazy. Well, no, it's still crazy to this day, and so I had been in a major wars with these guys, and through Philly, Virginia, all over the place. I mean, there's just anti-fascist movements all over the place, and they'd always be on our butts, and we'd be on their butts too. And I wound up kidnapping one of their guys. I mean, and that's just what I went to prison for. So, and of course, to me, that was being tough and being part of the crew and being idolized. And, at the time, we got guys that are killing people. We got guys that are robbing banks all over the place. We got guys that are selling stolen guns everywhere. I mean, I wasn't running around with the meth heads here of the neo-Nazi. These were guys who were plotting and planning race war and wanted to move things forward in that direction. So, yeah, to me, it was all about, and again, it's all about my ego. All about my ego. It's like, how did I look, and how brave and cool and tough and thought I was, and I was 17 years old. So for anyone that's judging me now going, my God, why should we? I was 17 years old, man. And I was kidnapping people and holding them for ransom. And that was the norm. That was the norm.
No, I mean, that is really messed up normal to have. Like, I'm kind of curious on how they, you being this young, how did they provide for you to go to all these places and do all this stuff? What did they give you money, or how did that work?
Just criminal activity on my own with the little crews I ran around. Um, the two biggest things, stolen guns was one. And then other just little criminal element things. We used to sell back then. The big thing was calling cards, or your credit card was a calling card back then. And back then everyone had payphones. There's no cell phone then. This is 1989, 1990, 1991. So we used to sell stolen credit cards and their numbers because you just be down the Jersey Shore, be hanging out down the Jersey Shore, and we stand by the payphones and the cell phone, or the payphones at the time, and people go up to go use them and be like, hey, why don't you give me $5 or $10 or whatever, and I'll give you this credit card number. It's probably going to last for 2 weeks, and you can use, and we do that type of things. And so we used to sell that type of stuff. Just all types of criminal elements. No drugs though. That was the only thing we didn't deal in, was drugs. So
Did that organization of those guys, they didn't want to be involved with drugs at all, or what was the deal with being no drug dealer?
couple things. We thought that the drugs were bringing the white race down, and all of us, like my family, my parents, I seen it in them, you know what I mean? So, but then the other thing was that, and this is the truth, if you're ever trying to build a criminal element or enterprise, is you don't want drug addicts in there, because drug addicts are always the first people to snitch.
Mm-hmm.
Once they get caught up, man, they want to go out, they want to get out and get high. So they're willing to give up names, they're willing to do any of that stuff. So, so drug addicts are always the first people to snitch. So you don't want them part of the organization.
What about so before we get into your going to prison and being locked up and eventually changing your life, is there any other topics or anything that we're missing to fill the gaps between that period of time to what we've discussed?
No, we're good. Let's move on to the good stuff.
Yeah, all right. So let's talk about you talked about it a little bit just maybe a couple minutes ago about the event that led you to getting. I can't recall how much time you got in prison. Was it 5+ years or something?
No, they gave me a three-year bit with some time served, but then I went upstate prison I had to do a year up in state prison. So,
okay. And so, do you want to walk us through the day of what happened, or like the crime that you did? Or,
I don't. I mean, I kidnapped the guy and I did
Okay.
horrible things to him, and we held him for ransom. That's what I did.
And they got it on video, and that's how they were able to convict you.
I videoed it.
Yeah.
I'm crazy, and I wanted to show all the newcomers, all my new group, my new recruits, don't be cool with this guy, because he was trying to be cool with a lot of my new guys, and I was afraid he was going to start telling them, hey, don't be a neo-Nazi, be the anti-neo-Nazis, you know what I mean? And that was not acceptable when I'm putting all this time into recruiting these guys, and he's just hanging around. Like, that was my main thought process. And plus, I just didn't like a lot of my older neo-Nazi guys were friends with him anyway, because they kind of grew up with his ex-girlfriend, with his girlfriend, and it was a whole big thing. Like, I just didn't like this guy being around. It was not good. And I just got done having a war in 2 different states with the anti-fascist movement. So I'm like, I'm not cool with this. And I became the leader now in this new state of Illinois. So I was like, I'm not cool with people being cool with this guy. Like, it's not good to let him hang around. Let's eliminate the problem right away. So that's it.
So with that, how'd the police get the video or like any of that? Like, how were they able to say, okay, we got proof he did it, now we're gonna?
Well, after we let him go, he went to the police, and then we traded the camera and the tape away at a tattoo shop for tattoos, very common for us, and the tape still had the kidnapping on it. So.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So then with that, they were able to show it to the police. And then how was it going to trial about this? What was the judge and the jury's thoughts and the lawyers and everything about what you were involved with?
Look, America doesn't have a lot of jury cases, just so you know. It's all plea bargains. And so I knew that a videotape of me kidnapping a guy, I didn't have a chance in hell to get found not guilty. So I had a plea bargain the best I could, and I was first offered 15 years, my first plea bargain, and we wound up fighting it. Public defender put a little bit of time in there, and for whatever people don't want to believe in God, it's fine, but God kind of stepped in and for whatever reason, helped me just get a 3-year bit.
So during that time locked up, you spent it at a couple different facilities. Then you said different. You went up to prison, state prison, and then also you were out in a county jail. So that's where you served your time. You had two different places.
Yeah, well, yeah, a bunch of different places. There was
Oh,
the county jail, and then once I got transferred from that county jail upstate, I went to a couple different prisons upstate. Just had a little troublemaker tag, a part of my file, because I was this huge neo-Nazi on the outside. I wasn't just a guy who was a neo-Nazi on the inside, which are a lot of neo-Nazis and a lot of Aryans, the gang of the Aryan, either Brotherhood or Nation. They're guys that before they got put in prison, were involved in any of that stuff. They just got involved in there. And me, I had a TV show in the same city that I was in jail for a while, so everyone knew of me. I had this cable access television. I did like the racist Wayne's World, so everyone kind of knew of me, and so I had this troublemaker tag. So they kept giving me max transfers, meaning transfer from one maximum security prison to another. And yeah, I went to some really rough prisons. I was in the same prison with John Wayne Gacy. If anyone remembers him, he was the dude that dressed like a clown in Chicago, and he didn't kill. I don't know if he killed people dressed as a clown, but he did get dressed as a clown a lot. But he would rape and kill, 17, 18-year-old boys, offer them jobs and bring them to his house, and then he drug them, rape them, and kill them and bury them under his house. I'm in the same prison with that guy for a while.
how'd that make you feel being around guys like that?
I wasn't scared. I was never, and I don't mean for anyone to listen to this to think I thought I was like some super hard guy. I probably did a little bit back then, but I was very well protected everywhere I went. So I never feared prison. I didn't fear that guy. I knew that when I got to the prison he was at, people would say, like, if you get a chance, stab him, kill him, because he had a big hit out on his head. And they kept him on death row, and he was always in his own yard, and you never got to see you never even really got to see the guy. But if you got the chance, you were supposed to take it. So I never felt like, oh my God, he's going to get me. And I never once thought about that stuff. I never once thought, oh my God, I better not go in the shower. Someone might get me. Like, because I was always with my crew. I was always with, I did everything with my crew.
Plus, I was gonna say, what about like the fact that you're in there with someone like him for what the crimes he did? Like,
no, that did have an effect on me. I do remember thinking like, wow, the people of this state really think I'm that bad of a human being that it's okay to stick a 17, 18-year-old kid in here with this type of guy. Absolutely, I had those thoughts sometimes, like, wow, like, and am I really that bad of a human being? Like, in the inside, just like a lot with, with alcoholics and drug addicts, like, if you knew my intentions, I'm good, but my intentions never came out the right way. So, right. So I just, so yeah, that I felt that sometimes, but other than that, man, I was just living life in there. And this, a lot of people tie my life back to American History X and all that, because look, what happened was, and my life was way before this was, again, American History X doesn't come out until 1998. This is all 1992, 1993, 1994. I mean, look, I was good at sports. I grew up playing sports my whole life. I'm an athlete. When I started to want to play basketball, because, you got some yard time. I'm an 18-year-old kid, man, in this maximum security adult prison. They call yard time. I'm going out to yard. I want to run. I want to play. I'm like a dog. I'm like, give me a ball. Throw a ball, and I'll go play. When I go play with some of my Aryans and the guys in the biker gangs and stuff, look, they fixed transmissions at 2 years old. They didn't learn how to dribble a basketball. They didn't learn how to throw a football. But they could tell you everything about your transmission on your bike and, a suicide gear shifter and all this stuff. I had no idea what they're talking about. I just didn't. I grew up in a city taking public transportation. So when I started hanging around and knew and also I knew some of these black kids and a couple of Latino kids, but mainly the black kids, I'd known them from the county jail. In the county jail, there's really no gang affiliations. You're just trying to get through the county jail to get through your case and hopefully not get sent to long upstate prison. Everyone's kind of cool. Everyone's like, I don't want to get in trouble here. Like, I'm trying to fight a case. So we just kind of become cool with each other. You're sitting at the same chow tables every day in the day room all day together. Of course you start talking to each other. And these guys taught me how to play spades. They taught me how to play dominoes. It was the county jail. And I got really good at those things. I'm a pretty good domino player. I lock the board up on you real quick when you ain't looking. You know what I mean? I know how to do all that stuff. And these guys taught me that. So anyway, when I stayed prison, here goes some of them guys I was in the county with coming up. And so I already kind of have a friendship with some of them. And my Aryans, there was no gang wars going on at the time. We deal drugs with blacks and Latinos, and they deal drugs with us. It isn't like the movies where we're like, never talk to them. No, we don't want to talk to the guards. Other than that, we're all trying to figure out how to get things around the guards and around the administration. That's what we're doing. And so I would talk with these guys when I would see G or Jello or Tony and them guys playing spades and they needed a spades partner. I'm like, yo, let me get in. This is in the state prison. This isn't. And my Aryans aren't going, how dare he? My Aryans knew that I knew more about this movement than any of the rest of them. Right? I didn't get involved in the prison with the. Had all the literature. I could tell you why we hate Jews. I could tell you break down all the statistics and did it because I've been arguing about this belief now for 6 years. I'm pretty good at it. Even the Muslims in prison like me because I would talk with them about the Jews. And they were always like, oh, this is a down white dude. So it just was cool. And so my Aryans never thought Frank's changing. I didn't think I was changing. I just enjoyed my time more with these guys because we talked about things that made me laugh. You know, there like G was funny, man. Like he would have you rolling. We'd sit there playing spades, and he would just mock everybody and make fun of everybody. And he always had something funny to say. You know what I mean? So I just enjoyed being around some of them guys at those stages. You know, don't get me wrong. When I went and took showers, I went with my Aryans every day in the bikers. Like that's what we do. We all go together. People shower. You have different rows. You shower while the guys watch your back and just kind of hang around the showers. And you get done showering and you sit there, dry off, let the next crew of guys get showered, and you watch each other's backs. Only because the guards can't see in the showers and there's no cameras obviously in there. So that's just a play. That's just one of the, and like when we go to chow, all the Aryans go together. We'd all go eat together. People couldn't sit in our section. We couldn't sit in their sections. And then there was neutral sections where you could sit. And some days I sat in the neutral sections. Again, none of my Aryans were like, oh, Frank's changing. They just knew I was this young city kid. I was this young urban kid from Philadelphia with a funny accent. You know, because this is Illinois. You know, this is Southern Illinois, where it's all bikers. And Southern Illinois is almost like Southern Alabama. Sorry, Southern Illinois, but they know it's true. So anyway.
Well, on the street though, you wouldn't do that. You think you wouldn't
No.
have mingled with them guys at all?
No. I mean, man, I might have sold guns back and forth with some of the brothers sometimes, but you know, because I don't. Look, man, you got a stolen Mac 10. It's literally stolen. You can't sell it to the militias. The militias don't want stolen guns in their cache of guns because then when they get raided, all their guns are going to get taken because of one stolen gun. And if they do buy it, they're going to buy it for $50 and then they're going to go bury it somewhere in case they ever need it. They're not going to have. You bring a stolen Mac 10 into the hood, I could sell the thing for $600.
More of a demand.
Yeah. So.
Well, with you, so this was kind of your way of changing then?
I mean, I didn't see it changing. I just thought I was doing what I got to do. But when I got out of prison, and I'm still involved in the movement, again, American History X, he gets out of the movement in there. That didn't happen, and it's not gonna. This just doesn't happen unless you're doing whatever. Unless you're doing life and you're done with the gang, then you go into protective custody and you get out. But other than that, you don't get out. And I didn't feel. I just thought I was just behind the wall, living behind the wall. And when I get back out of the wall, what they call the real world, once I get back out of the real world, I'm going to go back and being who I am. Right? That's it. And when I got out of prison, yeah, I had a daughter who I really couldn't see because I was still this racist, crazy thug, alcoholic, big time alcohol. I mean, I got out of prison. I'm full blown still an alcoholic. And so, you know, her mom really didn't want me being around her. And I get it now. At the time, I was like, you know, I was a big victim. You just don't want her part of my life, you know? And she's probably like, no, I want her to have a better life. And at the time, I don't see any of this. I just think that she's being mean to me and like everyone else. Again, my ego, low self-esteem, that stuff's kicking in. I go back to Philly, I get back into the movement, doing my thing. But there was just times, man, where, you know, you'd hear someone we go to a little get-together of neo-Nazis, and there'd be all these new guys coming in, and they would just say the same old ignorant things that I used to say. But now I'm looking at them going, man, that sounds really stupid. You know, all black people are this way. And you're kind of like, come on. Really? Like, not or not all that way. Like, and I just remember there was this moment where I was like, I remember this. I was on a train going up to meet up with all my neo-Nazi friends, and I made this decision inside myself. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to talk about blacks and Latinos anymore because I just been down with a lot of them, and yeah, we're kind of equal. I kind of get it. But I was like, I'm still going to talk about the Jews because that's my main thing. I'm going to talk about the Jews because that's where I honed all my expertise because it's so easy, right? Whenever there's something going wrong and you can't explain it or whatever to somebody, you say it's a conspiracy. It's Jewish conspiracy. It's easy. You just throw that out there. All right. Now you got to go and debate all that. So anytime, oh, it's the Jewish media conspiracy, you know. And so I just had this honed skill to say this stuff. Well, when you get out of prison and you got a swastika tattooed on your neck and skinhead written on your knuckles and you have an aggravated kidnapping on your permanent record for the rest of your life, when you go fill out a job application, these aren't good people skills. So no one will hire me. And then finally a guy comes to me and says, I can get you a job working at this antique show, running antique furniture. Will you take the job? And I had no other work prospects. I said, absolutely, I'll take that job. And the guy goes, well, the guy who owns the company is a Jew. You still want the job? And I was like, I don't care, man. I just need work. And I said, did you tell him about me? And he said, my buddy was a neo-Nazi too at the time. He says, yeah, I told him all about you. Just got out of prison and all that. I just told him all about you. And I said, well, what did he say? He said, he doesn't give a rat's ass what you believe. Just don't break his furniture. And I
Wow.
went and I showed up and I worked my butt off for this man. Just I had my first job in a while. I'm built. I just got out of prison. I'm stacked a little bit. Throwing antique furniture around is pretty easy for me. You know what I mean? So I was like, boom, went and worked hard and made good money in tips. And at the end of the weekend, and he seemed like a decent guy, man. He was a big Flyers fan. I'm a big Flyers fan. So it was like we had this little thing, but we didn't really talk much except for maybe hockey when we were around each other. And Keith looked Jewish. He talked. He used to say, "Oy vey, oy vey, what do you do to my furniture?" Like he would just, he just looked Jewish and he talked Jewish. At the end of that weekend, he owes me money, and I'm waiting for him to not pay me my money. I'm waiting for him to Jew me. And when he comes up to pay me, he counts out this money, and he's like, "How much I owe you?" I said, $300. He says, "All right, here's one, here's two, here's three, here's an extra $100. You're a really good worker." And all I thought about was, you son of a gun. You're ruining it. You're ruining it. Um, and now look, man, this is all human beings have this, not the anti-Semitic stuff. We all have that thing where you go to work and you have that little resentment at a person at work and you're driving to work and you're thinking about that person. It's a ping-ponging around in your head and you're like, man, if he says this, I'm going to say that today. I'm so sick of him. And if he reposts this and if he does this, and you think about all the arguments and how you're going to play the argument out and how he's going to say this and you're going to say that. We all do this type of stuff. It's called a resentment. It's what we all, unless you're so spiritual, you float your butt right off the planet. We all have these little moments. And I had that moment where I was like, man, I'm going to do this, and he's going to say this, and I'm going to say that. And he didn't come with anything. And it ruined my resentment. And I like my resentments. All right, I'm an alcoholic, drug addict. You better believe, because later on we'll get into that real quick, but I like resentments. I'm like a cat with a ball of yarn. Like, wow, let me keep playing with this resentment because now I feel better. Somehow I feel superior to you. And that's what I kind of was doing, and then he ruined it. And then later on, he drove me home, and he said, what do you do for a living? I said, I don't do anything. So why don't you come work for me full time? I said, all right. And I went and I worked for this man. Put for him full time.
Yeah, well, that's a big. That had been a lot of take a lot to make you do something like that because of your beliefs and everything that you were holding for all these years, and to be able to work for him. I mean, what were your friends and everyone in the movement on that, whatever the organization, what were they wanting you to get out, or I mean, what were their thoughts?
No, they didn't give a shit. They just knew I was working. I got out of prison. I was looking for work. I got work. No one said a damn thing to me. But what I did was, as I would start to go around and start being around this, during the time I'm working for him, now that there's times when I would just notice, like, I just kept my mouth shut, about the movement, about my beliefs. Like I'm not, I didn't have the cojones, and it's stupid for me to stand up in a group full of neo-Nazis and be like, wait, guys, you're wrong. No, I don't have, come on, that's not real. So what I would do is had internal arguments all the time inside my head about my beliefs and going, oh my God, like here's the thing with America. And this is where I got to. So anyway, I'll say this. Keith was really, really kind to me a lot. And he would say really kind things to me. He used to say, yo, Frank, you're a really smart guy. You're a really smart dude. And I had never really had people say this shit to me. And he's saying it to me. And we would work together. And if I made a mistake and I felt really stupid about stuff, I'd go, oh, Keith, I'm so stupid. He would say, stop saying you're stupid, you idiot. You're actually really, really smart. Stop saying it. And I just remember like feeling good the way he treated me. But I'll do this with America. And this is what I got tired of. And this is so much of America racism. You'll hear it all the time. I hate all black people except for John and Rodney and Eric. They're cool. I work with them or I went to school with them and they're cool. Like they're good guys, but the rest of them are all, the way I envision that I should hate them. I hate all Latinos except for Jose and John and Carlos and I hate all of them except for them because I work with them and I know them and they're friends of mine and they talk just like me and and they're good dads. It's so ignorant to say those things. And I got so sick of being that guy. Oh, I hate them all, except for the ones that I know. How dumb does that sound? And it's very common in America that you hear people talk like this. And just like people talk about white people, I hate all white people, and I'm really cool with this guy, I'm really cool with that guy, really cool with that. No, and I got tired of sounding like that. At the end of my beliefs in here, I'm beating my head against the wall to believe these things because I want the clout. I want to stay with the people I know. I want to hang out with the people that I get to do whatever I want to do with them. But I'm like, it's not working. It's not right. It's not feeding me the way it used to feed me. In fact, every time I'm taking more of the information in, I'm going, what? What are you talking about? Like, we're just human beings trying to make it on this planet. And I started to feel that and know that. And so I just stopped going around. I stopped being part of this. Like it wasn't fulfilling my thought of what the world was going to be around me. And in fact, just like and I'm so sorry if anyone takes this too personal, so be it. It's just like how Trump supporters are in this world right now. How many times, will you go talk to Trump supporters when they say, yeah, my family's not inviting me around and my sister doesn't call me anymore. And these people don't want me around and they're not inviting me to the weddings and the barbecues anymore. And they're like, it's because they don't want me to hear the truth about Trump. No, it's not that. We just don't want to hear the ignorance all the time. And it's nonstop. It's nonstop at every dinner table. Oh, Nancy Pelosi, the liberals this. And people are sick of it. And that's exactly what I was doing. Just with my neo-Nazi beliefs back then. My family stopped inviting me places. My family would have a barbecue, and somehow, shockingly, my invite didn't get in. And look, not mad at them for it. I get it now. I would ruin barbecues, sitting around talking stupid, talking about race all the time, talking about how bad these people are and how bad those people are. My family's like, we're here to enjoy ourselves. Not sit around and talk about Nancy Pelosi all the time and what the liberals are doing. Right? And that's, you hear that. And I was the same thing, man. Yo, when I was a neo-Nazi and I heard someone bring up the word, because this is back in the day, so mind you, if I heard someone talk about BET, Black Entertainment Television, rawr, what do you mean? Why don't we have white entertainment television? Not knowing that all television is white entertainment, especially back then in the 80s and 90s, you know what I mean? Friends wasn't very friendly towards the other people, right? So white entertainment television is everywhere. But when I would hear Black entertainment television, see, I don't think about that. I only thought about how come we don't have white entertainment television. Plus, the acronym for white entertainment television is more of a porno network than it would be, right? Think about it. So BET, you say BET, I went blank and I was on you. I was on you. Now, if you said, why do they have their own college funds? Yeah, why don't white people have their own college funds? Knowing that actually white people do have their own college funds. There's Irish American college funds, Italian American college, but that doesn't count. All I heard was they get something that I don't. Rawr! Become this beast. Right? Now I can go at you. It's the same thing you hear now when Trump supporters.
After you really just were done with all that, you started to get sober right after that and get clean and try to be more part of your family's life. You had a few kids and you did public speaking. And how did all that affect you?
Well, I just To be honest with people, and especially if you read my book, like, I didn't get the sobriety thing right away. I struggled off and on for years and years with in and out of the program. Um, so again, just because I stopped being a neo-Nazi, I still had some other underlining issues. I just did. Selfish and self-centeredness is the root of our problem. And that's who I was. I constantly thought about myself. Even out of the neo-Nazis, I wasn't completely fixed yet. And I'm still not. I have to work on myself daily, right? That's part of what this deal is about, right? To try and be a better spiritual human being today than I was yesterday. And that is accepting. And now, again, my racism doesn't pop back up, but my thoughts about myself will come back up, right? Now, for me to ever go back to being a racist, I would truly have to have like brain damage, because I know that I can't, because of the color of my skin, think that I'm better than any human being on the planet. Like, that's such a foreign thought to me now. It's actually a very idiotic thought to me, which is great, right? Because I've been out of it for a long time. So I started to try to help others, and that is what started to happen for me. Like, even though I was relapsing here and there, I started building hockey programs for kids to get kids off the streets in Philly and getting more black kids to play arguably the greatest game on earth. That's not a debate. I don't care what anyone says. Greatest game on earth is hockey, right? And it's just a great way of team building. When I was in prison, I played sports, and we used to put everything to the side, man. No matter what gang clique you were with, no matter what color you are, if we can win, we were going to win, and we played hard for each other. And so I got the Philadelphia Flyers to back me up in a hockey program. Then I also started helping a lot with law enforcement, going around and training law enforcement on hate crimes and hate groups and what their motivation is and what these type of groups mean, and if this group is more religious, if this group is more just about ideology of the white race. And I did that for a long time. For 25 years, I did that. Um, so I'll just tell you, man, about fast forward this, have a bunch of kids, and was married, and kept relapsing. Like, there was something not right, but I was doing a lot of, and this is the other thing, it's what I always tell people. If you knew all my good intentions in my head, but there was something that still wasn't connecting right with me. And that was, a true service to others. Stop. And I, just like every day, I do my morning prayers, and I always say the word stay. And stay means S-T-A-Y. S-T-A-Y. Stop thinking about yourself. Because when I think about myself, because of my upbringing, because of my drug addiction, because of my alcoholism that I've had, for whatever reason, man, I think about myself long enough, so low self-esteem comes in there, low self-worth. Or then I start thinking about, why does he get this and I'm not getting that? Why is he going, right? And that's part of the alcoholic brain and the disease of the alcoholism and drug addiction. And then to counteract those thoughts, then my ego comes in. Then I start to counteract those things with my ego. And what I've come to find today, and now I've been sober now almost 4.5 years, working a really good program and really dependent on God to do this with me, is, like I said, man, I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. And that's with a lot of people. And I kind of changed it to go, I'm not much, but I'm all God gave me. Let me make the best of this thing. And make the best of this thing is, man, I stand up for others. And so my activism, and this is where I get a lot of my thing, is through my activism. My activism isn't just, for the longest time, for 25 years, yeah, I went around and did interventions on people who were racist and in the neo-Nazi groups, and that's great. And helping another human being get out of the mud and the misery of that thought process is awesome. But for me, man, that sometimes, and I'm not, people want me, because some guys keep saying the N-word. They're like, you should go, sometimes you can't fix stupid. You can't. You just can't fix stupid. Sometimes people are just that way, and it's just, you do your best, and so be it. You give them an example. But for me, fighting real racism in this country, fighting the real racism in this country is, we have mass incarceration. We are the country that is supposed to be about liberty and freedom and all this, and we have mass incarceration of the poor. Now, for everyone goes, well, they did something wrong, so it should be in there. Mass incarceration isn't the upstate prisons where you've been sentenced. And now I am not a big believer of that we need to do away with prisons. I was in there. There's dudes that belonged in there.
Oh,
I
yeah.
belonged in there at the time, okay?
Mhm.
But mass incarceration is the growth of the American county jail system, which started in the 80s and 90s. And those were people that haven't been convicted of crimes yet. They're just waiting trial. And it's when people are in these county jails, the people that get paid for you being in the county jail is the local sheriffs and police departments. Whenever you spend one night in there, they get $400, $500, whatever that they bill the taxpayers for that. And so I started to see this and started noticing, like, wow, you know what? If we're going to go and we want to praise Dr. Martin Luther King, which absolutely we should, and you want to talk about the I Have a Dream speech, which everyone loves, only 15 minutes after he gets done talking about the Kumbaya, I Have a Dream stuff, he started talking about police brutality. Talk about Malcolm X, talks about police brutality. Talk about Huey Newton, talks about police brutality. Talk about Fred Hampton, talks about police brutality. Talked about James Baldwin, talked about police brutality. Like, we're not listening. We're not listening. And we are where we are today because of little tricks and stuff that is pulled by mostly our law enforcement. Pulling people out of cars for not using a blinker. Right? They didn't use their turn signal. Next thing you know, you're handcuffed and they're searching your car while your kids are sitting on the side of the road with you because they want to search your car. And they mostly do this to people of color, black and brown Americans, and poor whites. And that's what built mass incarceration. That is the trick. That's what happened when they changed these rules on treading on our Fourth Amendment, the rights of search and seizure. So anyway, I started to use my voice. And other Americans, black Americans, Latino Americans, people who heard me talking about that when I was a neo-Nazi, we planned on becoming cops. If you either became a criminal or a cop in our group, like that's what we talked about. And a lot of our guys did become cops, and they've since been fired because they got found out to be part of our groups, or some of them, the union protect them all the way through the rest of their career. It's just the truth. So why would I not stand up and say, this is the key to mass incarceration? If our founding fathers, when I was a kid, man, I loved Ben Franklin. When I was a kid, when I used to cut school from the black school, I used to go downtown Center City, Philly. I used to sneak in Ben Franklin's museum. Funny story is I used to sneak in the back door because I would be down there during school hours, so people were on school trips down there. As soon as the class would open up the door, the back door, I used to always sneak in. And I go run around the museum for 2-3 hours. Every exhibit I play with, touch with, listen to this thing about this guy named Ben Franklin. It's in his house. It's in his original house, his printing press and all this stuff. Funny story is the next year when I was at another school, we were taking a class trip to Ben Franklin's house. And I'm telling everybody, I sneak in there. I know all this. I know all these things because I sneak in the back door. And I'm telling everybody about how I sneak in. When we pulled up to the front door and got off our school bus, walking in the front door, there's a great big sign right at the beginning of it. It says free admissions.
You never knew that it was free?
Never knew it was free. And after I knew it was free, because of the way I grew up, I was never intrigued by it anymore. I was only intrigued when I was stealing the education. But anyway, I'm a big fan of Ben Franklin. And, Ben Franklin actually started the first police force called the Night Watchman, who used to watch for prostitution and robberies in Philly. Like, that was one of the first police forces in all of America. And they weren't slave catchers because Ben Franklin was an abolitionist. But anyway, if Ben Franklin was to come back to our country right now, and the first thing I'm telling you is people are going to ask us if they really had the chance to ever come back, if they came to us now and said, hey, here's America. Wow, superpowers, amazing. How's that freedom and liberty we left you? Oh, well, little snag flu here. We have mass incarceration that the world has never seen before. We have 2.7 now million people incarcerated. Oh, and on women who are mostly nonviolent, we have 34% of the world's women's prison population, even though we're only 4.6% of the world population. These are real numbers. And it's mostly our black and brown and poor Americans and it goes off of traffic stops. It goes off of any reason they get to want to pull you over and violate our Fourth Amendment. Like, people say, well, these people have done other things, right? But what started people's cases was they pulled you over, they got you on some other little thing, now you're on probation, or you just got a court case, right? And here's the funny thing is, they'll arrest you and get you in the county jail, make you bail out. Then you go to court to go fight some frivolous arrest. And guess what? The cop just doesn't show up. So everyone's like, oh, well, at least the cop didn't show up. Now they dropped the case. No, you still had to sit in the county jail. You still had to get bailed out. They still got paid for you being in their county jail and on their, and what's funny is if I don't show up for court, I get a bench warrant. And now the police get to go around and ask everybody for ID like Nazis. What you ever see when they pull people over, especially people of color or poor whites, and they always go, I want everyone's car ID in the car. We don't need to give our IDs because that's what the Nazis did. Everyone got papers. Everyone got papers to make sure you're not wanted. Yo, we are broken. And here's the, man, and I want people to listen to this and I want you to understand this. The world thinks we're really bad. They, across the board. Germany, other European countries teach about how not to be Americans. Seriously, they're too arrogant, they're too egotistical, they're too about themselves. This is in their textbooks now. People are talking about what's wrong with America. And we're not the bad guys that the world thinks we are, but we're not the good guys that we think we are. Right? We almost eliminated the Native Americans. We almost eliminated them. We've started frivolous wars. We started a war in Iraq over a lie, everybody. And we killed over 1 million civilians, 1 million people. I don't know if they're all civilians, mostly civilians. And now those men and women that were over there being trained to be an occupying force came home, become cops. So they have 4 years of being trained to be an occupying force. Then they come home and take a 4-month course on how to be a cop. Do you think they lost that training? This is the war coming back home on us. And we're building mass incarceration. So anyway, how I got to build some self-esteem inside myself is I stand up for others. I stand up for others. I stop thinking about myself. And it helps build. And now I'm a big believer in God. I'm a very big believer. In fact, I had a moment, I don't know if you want to get into it, I had a moment where something happened in my life and God basically told me what to do. And people would think I'm crazy, so it doesn't matter. But since I listened to that voice in this most dire straits of my life, I listened to what this voice told me to do. And since that time, I've lived the most beautiful life because I went to another man, and I have another man in my life, being my rabbi sponsor, who teaches me and shows me, for one, how to stay closer to God, but also I get to bounce ideas off him. I'm a criminal thug who grew up not going to school, not going to high school, training myself on how to be a militant guy. Actually, I have a problem coping with life, but now I have a spiritual advisor who I talk to every day, who some days he doesn't answer the phone, some days he'll call me back on other things, but I have a guy, I made sure I have a man in my life that I can call and bounce things off as a mentor and say, you know what, I'm getting a little behind on my rent. Do you think I should just leave and don't find somewhere else? To me, that's a good idea. And then I get to go bounce it off him where he goes, no, well, he won't tell me. He'll just say, well, maybe we should bring it to God for a little bit. Let's pray about it. Go get some thought, other thoughts on it, and get to rebounce things off and know that my character defects for a long time was just to run whenever I get in trouble or just to go hide so it's good that I have that type of man in my life and other men in my life that are the old elephants in my life to smack the young elephant around once because young elephants, man, a young elephant can do a lot of damage to something or somewhere. And I'll tell you this story real quick and then we can move on if you want. But in Africa in the 50s, might have been the 60s, there was this animal reserve they were putting together to try to stop poaching of elephants. So what they did was they went to all these herds around, most of Africa and then some in Asia and stole baby elephants and brought them all together and was like, hey, you know what, let's make a herd. These guys are young enough, these guys and these, heifers and bulls, they're young enough that they'll just make their own herd because they're young enough not to hate each other, right? Because they're from other herds. And everyone's like, oh, kumbaya, that's great, let's do that. There won't be no influence to not like each other. And basically, it's kind of their deal. Well, anyway, as these elephants all got older, they started going through musk. They started going through their, mating season type stuff. And so these elephants are acting crazy, right? They're killing the hippos and the rhinos, and they're like, just going after the humans and uprooting trees, which is always like a sign of like, stress and tension. And they're like doing all these things. And they're like, man, so they start killing some of the most aggressive ones. They're like, we just got to kill these ones and maybe the others will learn. And these old African men come to them and say, don't stop doing that. Because these elephants are so smart. They're the most majestic creatures on this planet. They're way more majestic than we are. And here these majestic animals know, yo, yous are supposed to be protecting us. They know this, right? Elephants are smart enough to know that these humans were supposed to be protecting them, and now they're shooting them. So now they're in this tizzy. They're like, what are we going to do? So the old African man goes, stop herding them. Go back to the old herds and get some of the biggest, baddest bulls and heifers, get them out of there, bring them to this herd, and let them teach them how to act like an elephant. Because they've never been taught how to act like an elephant before. And so anyway, I have men in my life, and a man in my life who teaches me how to act like an elephant.
No, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And I'm glad that you have this change of heart and that you really changed it around and that you were able to help people out it helps you by helping other people out. And that's what I've heard other people that I've interviewed that says that it helps them keep them on a straight path, sober, staying out of crime, and then even having a good mentor. That's great, man, because you can have someone that you can talk to about things. But overall, it's just, you've really changed your life around. You're not the same person you were back then. But to really overcome that and get out of that way of thinking, that had to take a lot of time and a lot of, like you said, even to this day, you still have to continue to fight battles in your head. But to really be 100% into a life like that, man, that has to leave a terrible impact on your head and just your mental health, man. But you were able to overcome it. You're sober today, 4 years. Congratulations on that, man. That is an achievement in itself. And just stay on the good path, man. Continue to do good things, because you can do a lot, man. You've already done a lot, really, but it's just, you can do a lot more good things by sharing your wisdom and your words. So I appreciate you taking out time and coming on.
Yeah, and I'll end it with this, man. The First Amendment. And so our Constitution, our Bill of Rights is written for a reason, man. And it's written, the First Amendment isn't just freedom of speech. It's what I hear all the time, especially from certain groups of people. It's about the First Amendment has 5 elements. It's freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the freedom of the press, the freedom to petition your government, and the freedom to protest. Right? It's 5 parts to one amendment. And those are so that we can be activists. If you notice, this all has to deal with activism. Our founding fathers knew as long as we have activism, we won't have terrorism. Right? That's what they thought. And it's the right way to think. So if everyone implements, and you want to go out and do these things, and you want to stand up for what you believe in, use those 5 parts of the First Amendment. We don't need to shoot each other. We don't need a civil war. Our founding fathers have set it up so that we can just do it the right way. And that's by petitioning, protesting, presses, you can go out with your camera and record the police. Good idea. Everyone should try to do it, because we're trying to get them in line, right? And if you stand back with your camera and just record, you're not doing anything wrong. We're showing our government, hey, there's something wrong. Mass incarceration is not right in this country, especially when you look at who it's being done to. So just follow the game, the rules to the game. Follow the rules to the game, and we're going to get there together. Last thing I'm going to say is, look, in 300 years from now, we are all going to be one color. It's a fact. This isn't, and people will say that's why we need to stop the border. That's what I hear from the right wingers. Even if we shut the border off right now, we're still all going to become one race, one tribe of people.
Frank has got quite the redemption story. The main reason I brought him on today is to show everyone that racism is whack. You heard it firsthand from Frank that thinking like a racist is very negative. Frank was able to change his way of thinking over time. This just goes to show that you can change that way of thinking. If Frank can, anyone can. Please comment any key takeaways that you got from this interview. Please share it with anyone that you think will enjoy this type of content. Also, please be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel to get more interviews like this. At the end of this video, a playlist will pop up of all my other interviews I've done in the past. Please check them out, and thank you again so much for watching.